Hello, DawgNation. This is Brandon Adams live from Los Angeles, California with this very special DawgNation Invasion recap as we look back on a big day for the Georgia Bulldogs here in L.A. that included a day of practice and a day of fun here at Disneyland. So settle in here for the next few minutes. We'll give you the sights and sounds of all of it as it unfolded today. And as I said, it did start with a day at practice. We'll have more on that in a moment. But I do kind of want to focus in on Georgia getting a chance to enjoy Disneyland there in Anaheim, California. And Marcellus Wiley, the ESPN NFL and college football analyst and host, took some time to visit with the crowd in attendance there and introduce the Georgia Bulldogs on the scene. We'll get ready to show you that. Marcellus Wiley checking in and letting Dog fans say hello to Kirby Smart and say hello to some of the Georgia players, those who were there in Disneyland. Here's what that looked like today.
We got our four captains with us. Sonny Michelle's here from Plantation, Florida. Isaiah Wynn from St. Petersburg, Florida. Roquan Smith from Montezuma, Georgia. And Nick Chubb from Cedartown, Georgia. Thank you guys, and go Dogs.
And enjoy the rest of the day at Disney California Adventure and enjoy the playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl game. Thank you guys.
So the Georgia coach, Kirby Smart, some of the Georgia players getting introduced and saying hello to some of the fans who were there in Disneyland. And then Georgia got a chance to actually sort of settle in and enjoy one of the rides, the Guardians of the Galaxy ride there at Disneyland, at Disney's California Adventure. Some of the Georgia players, along with Kirby Smart, actually had a chance to check that out, and it seems like they were having the time of their lives doing that. Here's a look at that.
And Rocket unplugs you and starts things right. Now show me those hands, people.
It's amazing. Have a little off time and then being able to come out here to such a fun park is pretty amazing. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm just looking forward to and getting the experience to ride many different rides because I've heard a lot of great things about it.
I've never been, so it's all new to me. So I'm gonna ask some questions, get some good recommendations, and see what I should try first. Kind of get out here and relax and kind of take our mind off the game for a little while.
I think our players are enjoying it, and it's a great honor to be here, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for some of our players.
In our comment section, Eric Moody says that Nick Chubb's reaction during that video of them riding the ride was classic. I think it was. I think Kirby Smart's was there as well. And I guess my understanding is that Sonny Michelle was invited to ride the ride and be a part of this, and I guess he chose not to. Maybe if you see the reaction there from the Georgia players, that may seem like a good decision, but overall, Georgia clearly having a good time there at Disneyland. It's nice to see them getting a chance to enjoy some of this and sort of soak in what was a really pretty day in California today. We're obviously live in Los Angeles covering all this for you. It's dark behind us now, but the sun was out all day long today, very warm. Now, to some of the folks in California, maybe not so much so. I saw plenty of folks wearing jackets today, but certainly for the folks who traveled over from Georgia, where it was pretty cold when I left Georgia on Tuesday, and to enjoy some warm, nice California sunshine was kind of a cool thing, and to see the Georgia fans and the Georgia players and coaches getting a chance to do that at Disneyland today was also a pretty cool thing as well. Roderick Henderson in our comment section says, that was good stuff, so happy for our dogs, and Roderick, I would agree with you on that. There is a degree to which, as you see, by the way, a moment ago, the Georgia players and coaches with Groot, the character from Guardians of the Galaxy, but I would agree with you that it is a cool thing to see Georgia get a chance to enjoy this, and, you know, we have watched Georgia go through the rigors of such a tough and challenging season, and Georgia's passed every test with flying colors, and obviously there's plenty more big football to come. Oklahoma in the college football playoff in the Rose Bowl on January the 1st, and maybe a national championship game beyond that. There's still plenty of that to come, but there's also a sense in which it's kind of nice to see these guys, at least on this particular day, get to pause and enjoy the moment here. On this particular day, get to pause and just rest a little bit. And you heard that in the words of Roquan Smith a moment ago, and from Georgia running back Nick Chubb as well, that, you know, listen, these guys have been pedal to the metal all the way back since August for a little bit of time today to get to enjoy the spoils of victory a little bit, and the and the fun that comes with being at the Rose Bowl. That's a really cool thing to be able to say. Cassandra Turner in the comment section says Chubb was hilarious. Roquan Smith was hanging on to Kirby. That was awesome too. And yeah, as we said, that was a pretty entertaining thing to be able to see. Jordan Wansley says this kind of stuff is huge for recruiting. And Jordan, I've got to imagine that is absolutely true. That for, either the guys who are still holdouts for the class of 2018. We talked this morning on DawgNation Daily about wide receiver Tommy Bush, who tweeted out the message that he had gotten from Georgia, almost like a postcard from Pasadena. When you get a chance to see that, I mean, how could that not work on a guy like that? Or Isaac Taylor Stewart, or some of y'all have mentioned, who's actually from not too far south from here. A guy like that's got to be impressed by this. Tyson Campbell is going to be impressed by that. To say nothing of the 2019, 2020 recruits who were looking to see what Georgia's doing. And I think back to what Nolan Smith, one of the Georgia's prize commits for the class of 2019, at one point in time said about the schools that he was choosing from. He's obviously a Georgia commit, but he's, maybe flirted with Clemson a little bit. He's been mentioned in the same breath with Ohio State and Alabama before. And, guys like that have talked about how they want to see teams win. They want to see teams play on the biggest stage. Well, right now, those guys, those 2019 commits, the holdouts for 2018, they are seeing Georgia on the biggest possible stage of all, and it's kind of a cool thing to see. As much as fans are enjoying seeing some of their favorite players have a great time at Disneyland, there's a lot of football players sort of looking at this from a very different perspective. They're almost looking at this from a business-like way of, hey, I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to ride that big old 747 out there to California in those first-class seats that reclined all the way back. I'd like to be a part of that, and who could not want to do that? And so I think that even though Georgia has a chance to win a national championship this year, the biggest overall impact of the Rose Bowl may be the ricochet it has and the dividends that it pays for UGA in recruiting as more and more guys kind of sign up and want to be a part of this in the future. Bubby Dean kind of agreeing with that this stuff is enticing for recruits, and it absolutely is. John Whitmire talked about the schedule for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a day to hear from Oklahoma defensive staff and some Oklahoma defensive players. The Georgia defensive staff are going to speak a little bit. Georgia does have a practice tomorrow. We will be able to be a part of some of that practice and bring some of that coverage for you here at on DawgNation Daily and their special DawgNation Invasion recap shows. We'll be able to do that. And you get the sense, we're going to hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart in just a moment, but you get the sense that this schedule starts to transition just a bit here. And, Georgia is, during its practices, heavily focused now on Oklahoma. The work that was done back in Athens was more of those, what Kirby Smart's called the camp practices, and focusing in on Georgia's own fundamentals. What you're seeing now from Georgia here, both in the practice today, and Kirby Smart's going to talk about that with us here in just a moment, and the practices later on this week. These are practices that will be kind of paying much closer attention what Oklahoma brings to the table and focusing in on what the Sooners are going to do. That's what these practices are going to be about. And so you will see a transition here to a little bit more business-like approach from Georgia in the next few days after getting a chance to have some fun at Disneyland. Now, they'll still get to do their beef bowl at Lowry's coming up in a couple days. They'll still get to see how much beef they can scarf down. So there's still some of that kind of bold stuff here in the mix. But obviously, Georgia gets much more serious here as the Rose Bowl is approaching here on January the 1st. Of course, we're glad to be bringing coverage of that to you tonight here on our DawgNation Invasion special recap, looking back on the day for the Dogs in around L.A. and Anaheim today for the trip to Disneyland. I'm glad to be able to do it with you. My name is, of course, Brandon Adams. I do DawgNation Daily live for you each and every day. We'll do that tomorrow morning here once again from Los Angeles, but it's also great to be with you on the program tonight. We'll have more of your comments here coming up as well. As promised, I do want to give you a chance to hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart, because the subject of the day is what many of you were just talking about. Great to see Georgia having fun. I think, if I'm honest here, there's a degree of jealousy here, and I don't mean that in any kind of, sinister way, but they're obviously having the time of their lives, and how could you not want to be right there on that ride with them or right there on that trip with them as they are getting a lot of love and a lot of treatment. Nobody treats you better, Kirby Smart said this, than the folks at the Rose Bowl do, and Georgia's getting a chance to enjoy all of that right now. But this was sort of a big hurdle for Georgia kind of move past, and this was a big sort of day of distractions. And Kirby Smart was asked by a media member today, now this trip to Disneyland's behind you, is it kind of nice to sort of get the distractions behind you maybe as well? Are the distractions now over now that the trip to Disneyland is through? And Kirby Smart gave a very Kirby Smart-like answer. Take a listen.
Well, I think the distractions are there throughout. We've got events, they got different things for the players playing. It's good for them to get their mind off of it a little bit. We try to recenter them each day with meetings and practice and keep as much of a normal routine as we can for the week. It's tough to be normal when you're out here.
Wayne Folan in our comment section said that I am pumped up here tonight, and I really am. I feel incredibly grateful to be a part of this trip and a part of the folks who get a chance to see what Georgia's doing here and a chance to anticipate what Georgia's going to do on January the 1st. So I do feel incredibly blessed to be a part of that. And I thought it was interesting what Kirby Smart had to say right there, that when it comes to these bowl games, the distractions to a certain degree aren't ever truly over. I mean, there's, it is the bowl's job in certain respects to make sure these players are having a good time and make sure that the Georgia coaches and the Georgia administration and the folks who've traveled in from around DawgNation to be a part of all this, to make sure they're having as much fun as they possibly can have. And that's clearly what what these bowls are trying to do. And Kirby Smart was then asked, well, so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with this sort of constant onslaught of events that you got to be a part of, media availabilities that that Kirby Smart doesn't always love? How do you deal with all that in the midst of playing also your most important game of the season coming up in just a few days? And Kirby Smart addressed that today from Disneyland here today as well.
We've got to make sure our kids have the right perspective. Because when you come to these events, you got to be careful. I mean, there's times that you can forget there's a game, and that's the central point. And we've got good leadership on the team, and we're trying to make sure they understand that.
I think one of the things that Kirby Smart says there that is so true is, and I can tell you this from just walking around in L.A. here, walking by the Georgia team hotel, seeing the action here from Disneyland today, and bumping into a few Georgia fans. In the early stages of bowl week, there is such a feeling of almost like a vacation that you really can forget that you're here for a reason, especially for these these Georgia players and coaches who truly will have the biggest test they faced all season coming up in just a few days. It's easy to kind of forget about that when all the pageantry surrounds everything that's going on and all the events. And a lot of these guys probably, being treated on a trip better than they've ever been treated before in their lives. These are young players. They maybe haven't had the chance to be a part of such grand travel, but they are certainly being treated in grand fashion right now. And it is, to a certain degree, easy to forget that there is a game that's coming up here, and then you've got a chance to be a part of that and a chance to write a legacy at Georgia that's going to be remembered for certainly decades and decades to come, if not forever. And Kirby Smart's obviously going to do his part to keep instilling that thought into the mind of his players. And one of the ways he's going to do that is by maintaining the same rigorous practice schedule that was maintained in Athens throughout the season in preparation for regular season games. Georgia's also doing that here now in California as well. As we said before, it's a bit of a transition here. It was back in Athens, sort of those camp-style practices, those fundamental-based practices where you were focusing in on what you needed to do to be better at yourself, and now you're focusing in a little bit more on the Oklahoma Sooners. But the report from Kirby Smart today was that practice in California actually went pretty well. Here's Kirby.
It was good. We got back out there, broke a good sweat. It was good and warm, a little unseasonably warm for our guys, and I thought they pushed through it. And we challenged them to trust us and understand that they got to go. It's going to be a high tempo game, and that's the way it was last year against TCU. We had guys that got winded in that game, so we want to make sure we're in good shape.
And it was warm here today. I can attest to that. Warmer today in California than it's been in Georgia in quite some time. So I'm sure that was a little different sort of perspective from practice for these Georgia players, but I have no doubt they were ready for that. And, one of the things that we talked about this morning on DawgNation Daily was the degree to which I think that Georgia fans are sort of growing in confidence as you get closer to this Rose Bowl game, as you start focusing a little bit more on Oklahoma. And it's probably true that the Oklahoma side of things, those fans probably feel like they've got a great chance of winning this game as well. If there was some sort of Sooner Nation Daily, some sort of Oklahoma podcast or video show like this, I'm sure from that perspective they have a lot of reasons why they think they're going to beat Georgia. We're hearing from a lot of Georgia fans in our comment section who think the Dogs are going to beat the Sooners. That's just kind of the way that it goes. But one of the reasons why I do think Georgia fans probably have a justifiable degree of confidence is because, if there was ever going to be a coach that was going to be able to settle his team down, block off the distractions that kind of come from a Rose Bowl like this, and really sort of zero in on what the job's been all season long, which is to practice harder than the game is going to be, I trust Kirby Smart to do with that. And I don't say that lightly. And I actually made an appearance this afternoon on my show that I normally do when I'm back in Atlanta, AT&T SEC Country Live. And one of the things I talked to Mike Johnson about on the show this afternoon when I joined him was, and Mike knows this because Mike played in a Rose Bowl. Those of you that watch AT&T SEC Country Live, you know that, or if you've heard Mike on DawgNation Daily, you're aware of this. Mike played at Alabama. He played in a Rose Bowl. And the one thing I told him was, and I'm speaking here not as a media member for a moment, I'm actually speaking here strictly from the perspective of a fan. there's a degree to which, you hear over and over again coaches talk about, hey, you got to block out distractions. Hey, you got to keep the main thing, be where your feet are, and all those cliches that get used over and over again. When you actually see this and see the way these players and coaches are treated at the Rose Bowl, see all the sort of lavish, treatment that comes their way, there's a degree to which you almost wonder, wait, are they going to be able to block this out? Are they going to be able to treat this like just any other game? Because it is clearly not just like any other game. I mean, the footage we showed you from Disneyland's proof of that. The big 747 they rode in on is proof of that. The extra media scrutiny and availability and opportunities to do interviews, or maybe even, I guess the better word is obligation to do interviews. That's all proof of that as well. Are they going to be able to block this out? Then you, of course, remember that Oklahoma's going through some of the same kind of stuff here. And it's not more on Georgia than it is on Oklahoma, but it is somewhat overwhelming to be an eyewitness to just how much extra special treatment a team like Georgia is getting in an event like this. And, Kirby Smart's ways, his mannerisms become more important to this team. Georgia has been a team that's really been galvanized this year by tremendous senior leadership, whether you're talking about Nick Chubb or Sony Michel or Davin Bellamy, Lorenzo Carter. There is a degree to which I think, though, where that leadership is somewhat muted in this game because they actually haven't been to this spot either. There is a chance they're just as overwhelmed by this big stage as some of the freshmen and sophomores are. But Kirby Smart, as an assistant coach at Alabama, has been through this a lot, even in Pasadena in this game in the Rose Bowl. And I think that the leadership that the head coach can instill in the program actually becomes pretty important here over the course of the next few days. And the place where all that's going to take shape is at practice. It's one of the reasons why here on our DawgNation Invasion recap, we're going to spend such a significant amount of time looking back on the part of the Georgia practice that we can tell you about and that we can know about, we can kind of focus in on. We're gonna try to provide that coverage to you because I think it's between these two coaches, Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart, the guy that gets the most done and the most out of his team in practice that's ultimately going to decide this game when it's played on January the 1st. So let me get a few more of your comments in here and then we'll get ready to get out. Nancy Erickson says, let's bring it home, dogs. Obviously, Georgia fans are incredibly excited about that. The opportunity to bring this one home and actually head back home for a chance to play in the national championship game in Atlanta, in the shadow, really the capital city of DawgNation. How much fun would that be? Mark Cole Sr. says, come on, let's be Monday already. The waiting is killing me. And, Mark, I will agree with you. There is a degree to which it seems like there has almost been a bit of an interminable wait here to get to this January the 1st. It seems like, Georgia's last game was like 9 months ago. Early December seems quite a long time ago now, and we are getting close for it to being here. We are certainly on the way for it to be here, so have no fear. That wait will be over soon enough. Let me hit a few more comments before we get ready to get out. Rick Poff says, should the Dogs receive the opening kick or kick off first and defer if Georgia wins the coin toss? I've loved kicking off and getting the ball in the second half, and I think that's generally a pretty good idea. And maybe in this game you want to keep the Oklahoma offense off the field in the early going here. I think fast start both for Georgia on first down and in the first quarter probably matters in this game. So whether Georgia gets the ball to start the game or defers to the second half, I think what's going to be crucial when Georgia does have the ball, and we talked about this morning a bit, I think what's going to be crucial is figuring out, can Georgia get those early yards to make second, third down more manageable? That to me is one of the deciding factors in this game. What can you do to keep Baker Mayfield and the Oklahoma offense off the field? Because when Mayfield's out there, he's going to compile yards, he's going to score some points. But you can limit his effectiveness in this game if he's standing on the sideline. Obviously, every Georgia fan has talked about that to a degree. So maybe the way to go for Georgia here is, if it has a chance to take the opening possession of the game, maybe that's the way to do that, to set the tone early. That Georgia is going to go on long, clock-killing, morale-destroying drives, using a big, dominant offensive line for Georgia that's been pretty good this year and really opened a lot of holes in the game against Auburn in the SEC Championship, using that to its advantage. Steady dose of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel and DeAndre Swift. Use that trio to set the tone early for Georgia in this game. That might actually be an interesting way to start this game for Georgia there for sure. Let's get a few more comments here, then we'll get ready to say goodbye to you here today. Pat Bynum says, they aren't going to just give this to you, dogs, but you've got what it takes to take it. And, boy, I think a lot of Georgia fans would echo that sentiment as well. There is a level of trust that this team has earned from the fans who will be supporting it, both in and around Dog Nation, watching on TV, folks traveling out to California, and I've loved hearing from so many people here today who are saying, hey, save me a spot. I'm going to be there, on Friday or on Saturday. A lot of folks coming in on different days. And I believe that fan base that's either going to gather here in California or watch all around the world, I do think they echo the sentiments of that commenter there who says that this Georgia team, is good enough to take this. This Georgia team does have what it takes to overcome all of the distractions that the Rose Bowl might provide, deal with a formidable opponent like Oklahoma, and get it done here on January the 1st. There are a lot of positive vibes coming from Georgia fans in that regard. Bubby Dean says the seniors need to help Kirby keep this team level-headed, and I think that's probably true, and I believe they probably will get ready to do that. Josh Lopez says they're going to see how hard the SEC hits. And, Josh, to a degree, it does kind of come back to that in moments like this. The two styles of play, the two conferences, could not be more different. Oklahoma and the Big 12, it is thought to be more of a finesse league, just a little bit. The SEC, obviously, by reputation, a little bit more about dominance along the lines of scrimmage. Georgia's been really good with its offensive line and its defensive line. Can Georgia live up to the SEC reputation in this game? I think a lot of Georgia fans think they will be able to, but I think that is kind of one of the subplots of this game that sort of bubbles just below the surface. The Georgia players, they're not going to say that they believe that SEC football is superior. The Oklahoma fans aren't going to say that the up-tempo Big 12 brand of football is superior. But behind the scenes, that both sides have to feel that way about the other, that the two ways of life, the two brands of football could not be more different. A lot of Georgia fans hope that Josh is right with what he said there, and that SEC dominance along the line of scrimmage is what Georgia puts on display. That hallmark of this league in the BCS era is true once again the college football era as well. We're going to have a great time talking to you about all of this from California here this week. That includes tomorrow morning. Make sure you set your clock for 10 a.m. Eastern time for another episode of Dog Nation Daily Live. I'll have a lot more from Georgia coach Kirby Smart looking ahead to the Rose Bowl. A lot of what he had to say here on this Wednesday, we'll play that for you tomorrow on Dog Nation Daily. Make sure you're part of that. We'll also have a special conversation with Dog Nation's Chip Towers as well. So make sure you're back 10 a.m. for that. We'll be back with you throughout the day with a lot more surprises as well. As the Dogs get ready for the Rose Bowl, we're happy to be bringing you the coverage. Check out DawgNation.com for more, and we'll talk to you again here on video again very soon as well. Y'all have a great night.